Hello, everyone. Welcome to Doman Learning's March question and answer session. This is a Q&A we do once a month live on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. And parents join us from around the world and ask us questions about the Doman Method, parenting, early childhood education, and we do our very, very best to answer any of your questions. So wherever you are in the world, welcome. I'm joined by my brother, Noah, who is the head of parent success here at Doman Learning. And he's joined us to help get your questions answered because we got a lot of pre-submitted questions this month. Now, the way we do things here, this is a 30-minute Q&A. We start with your pre-submitted questions from the parents in the Doman Learning Parent Facebook group. So these are parents who have already enrolled in Doman Learning courses and are using our materials and have follow-up questions. And if we've still got some time left over at the very end, we take questions from the general audience. So if you're joining me right now, just throw questions into the comments box and hopefully we will have time for them. We have a couple of quick announcements. So first of all, if you'd like to have like a one-on-one chat with a member of the Doman Learning team, you can talk to Noah. Noah, do you want to talk for a second about how people can reach out to you and schedule calls?
Yeah, sure. So I do 15-minute discovery calls with parents. So if you're wondering if the Doman method is right for you and your child, or what is it, or if you've seen a video recently of a baby learning with red dots, right? Ask away. Sign up. I will put a link in the chat. If you are on Instagram, you can go to the link in our bio and schedule a call with me there. But I'm, like Spencer said, we have a lot of questions today. So if we can't get to your questions, schedule a call with me. We'll get on the phone and I'll get you the answers that you need.
Yeah, so I've posted the link on Facebook and YouTube. And if you're not able to click that link there, Noah, should they just email you if they can't find this link?
Yeah, they can email me at hello@domanlearning.com. And, if you don't want to talk, if you just want to email, you can email me there and I'm happy to answer your questions too.
Perfect. I'm just throwing Noah's email up there for all of you. And then our second announcement is if you purchase any Doman Learning course, our reading course, our math course, our gift of knowledge course, our Doman baby course at domanlearning.com, you can get a 10% off any course at checkout if you use the coupon code Spencer10. So I will post that again, 10% off any bundle course or materials at domanlearning.com. So I'll just throw that up there. Perfect. All right, Noah, should we get to some questions?
Yeah, we have a lot. So let's get to it. This is from Lee Dance. She's asking, we're entering month 3 of the reading program, which introduces geography terms like countries and cities. Since these are paired with pictures, similar to Doman cards, should we complete one full category like all European countries before moving on to the next region?
No. In fact, I'd probably recommend against that. For example, doing all European countries and then moving on to all Asian countries and then all North American countries. Usually the best way with any subject is to get started with just one category, maybe 2, and make sure your child's interested in it first. I warn parents of that because sometimes they'll prepare a lot of materials in a specific subject, then they show the first set to the child and they realize their child isn't interested in it. Now, what I always say to parents is just because your child isn't interested right now in, let's say, North American countries, it doesn't mean in 6 months they won't be interested. In fact, we tend to find as children get older, especially when they're exposed to a lot of different subjects, their interest grows, okay? And they tend to become more and more interested in new things. But that's my only warning. So no, you definitely don't have to show. And I would use this as an example for any subject, right? It's not necessary to show every breed of dog before you move on to cats, right? It's actually better to teach the child about many different subjects and get them interested in things.
Okay, moving on. Also from Lee Dance, I also bought your math program and I will begin soon. I was wondering, since you said your parents used it on you, Do you still have the ability to subitize numbers until 100 and do mental calculations with big numbers? As for the bits of intelligence cards, do you still have all of this knowledge now, or did you forget a big part of it while growing up?
Great, great questions. So, taking the first question first, am I still able to subitize and recognize high quantities visually? No, I don't. I was able to do it as a baby, and I know that both because my mom confirms it, but also because I have some distant memories of seeing large quantities and being able to recognize them. But they're very, we're talking about when I was a very, very tiny child. But more importantly, my mom confirms that I could differentiate them and recognize them. And we've found that most children actually, when they get beyond 4, 5, 6 years of age, that ability to subitize seems to get replaced as when they start working more and more with numerals, with the symbols for numbers, and as they kind of also go into school and begin to learn math in a school structure. What I always say to parents is the far more important thing is that this teaching of innate number sense, teaching children quantities, just gives them a huge boost and a leg up in terms of doing mental math. That's the most important thing. And there's no question in my mind that it's greatly helped my mental math later in life. I never had any challenges learning math. I'm not saying this to brag. I'm just saying it because this parent is specifically interested in, do you lose math ability as you get older? I always got, the best grades in math. I didn't have to work hard for it. But I think a lot of that is because of the early math teaching that I got, with my parents. Yeah. And sorry, just to answer that second question. No, I don't recognize every Doman card I was ever taught. I do have to say I'm pretty surprised at how much I do remember. But again, the Doman cards are the most important thing about them is giving a child a broad range of knowledge in different subjects, getting them interested in those subjects so that they can, as they get older, focus more and more on the things that they're truly passionate about. And it gives them a really good general knowledge across many different subjects.
I wanted to add, because my background is actually in math. That's what I studied in college. And, for me, how I see subitizing is like crawling. For instance, Spencer and I, we could get down and crawl, but we're not as good as we were little babies or kids. But that's because we found something much better, which is walking, right? It's a much better form of transport. And just like subitizing, we have these, numerals, these abstract notion of quantities, which are way easier to use in mathematics than actually visualizing the quantities. But as a stepping stone to that, it's so, so important to understand that.
Yeah. And no, I haven't actually told you this, but I just came back from a trip in New Zealand, and I was talking to a father on our program, and he is he runs a sheep farm. He's from New Zealand. He runs a sheep farm. He has about 1,000 sheep. And he told me that he can look out at his flock of sheep and recognize within about 10 if all of them are there or not. So in other words, he's got 1,000 sheep, but if he goes out one day and looks out and there are 990 of them, he goes, wait a second, there are some missing, right? Now, for most of us, we'd look at 1,000 sheep, 990 sheep, and have no idea what the difference was. The reason why I bring this up is there are adults that seem to need this ability to subitize large quantities, like sheep farmers or cattle ranchers who actually retain this ability into adulthood. And by the way, interestingly, this farmer also grew up as a child on the sheep farm himself, so he learned this ability as a child. But for the vast majority of adults, subitizing at large quantities is just not something we need on a regular daily basis. And so that's another possibility, that just because we don't need it over time, we just kind of lose the ability.
Okay, this is Lee Dance's last question. I have an older child who is almost 7. I didn't know about the Doman method when she was a baby, so I couldn't use it. In your grandfather's books, he says that the right brain learning only works until 6 years old, but he still recommends subitizing from 1 to 20 to older children. Do you agree?
So, first of all, I think there's been a little bit of a misunderstanding there about that somehow at 6 years of age, children kind of lose their ability to learn. In fact, the Doman method teaching, we use it with older children, for example, with learning difficulties, but even certain elements of our program could and probably should be utilized in higher grades and even in university. Like, for example, I spoke to a medical school professor who used Doman cards in his classroom with his med students, and his students greatly improved in their performance on standardized medical school tests. This teaching, it's even, sorry, this is a side comment, but even in the US, high school students who study for SATs, like our some of our toughest exams, or GEDs, which is the graduate school exams, what do? They go online and they buy flashcards online, so that they can study things. So there's the Doman method works across age range. If we look specifically at what this parent calls subitizing, what we would call innate number sense, the ability to recognize quantities. Yes, absolutely. We teach it. It's the first stage of teaching children math. So even for children above 3 years old, even children who are 6 and above who are just starting math for the first time, it's the first thing that we do. And in the Math Before School course, which is the Doman Learning Math course that I highly recommend, I talk about how we teach children, even older children, to recognize quantities. We don't go up to 100. We actually first focus on 1 to 10, and then we kind of take, math instruction from there. So I highly recommend the Math Before School course to anyone who kind of wants to learn more about that.
This question is from Mukai. She says, at what stage do you recommend reducing the font size for the reading program?
Well, if you have the Reading Before School course and materials, you don't have to worry about it, because the materials that are in that course reduce on their own. Like from month to month, the text gets smaller and smaller as you get to couplet sentences and homemade books. Now, if you are making your own materials, generally I say don't focus on reducing the print size of words. But focus, when you begin the next stages in the Doman reading program, couplets, sentences, homemade books, you're forced to actually reduce the print size to fit more words on a page, right? But when it comes to the single word materials, right, like here I've got a single word, it's not really necessary to keep reducing the single word size, okay? So we tend to keep that large. And you can see from the Doman Learning materials, this is a regular letter size paper, or in other parts of the world, A4 paper, and you can make really nice large, words this way. But then again, couplet sentences, homemade books, you start reducing the print.
Okay, this question is from Sahi. My 3.5-year-old was highly engaged as an infant, but has since lost interest in cards and books. Now that I have an infant as well, how can I reignite their interest? Also, how do we reach the program goals when the 10 sets, 10 times a day schedule is impossible for a school-age child and a working parent?
No, I missed the first 2 sentences. Can you read them one more time for me?
Yeah, sure. So this is from Sahi. My 3.5-year-old was highly engaged as an infant, but has since lost interest in cards and books. Now that I have another infant as well, how can I reignite their interest? How do we reach the program goals when the 10 sets, 10 times a day schedule is impossible for a school-age child and a working parent?
Got it. Okay, let me start with the second question first, because it might relate to the first one, which is, my guess is this parent is trying to take some of the program outlines that our grandfather, Glenn Doman, wrote in his book, and are trying to do it in daily life, because the 10 sets a day is something that he recommends in some of his books. Like I think How to Multiply Your Baby's Intelligence, that might be recommended, which he wrote in the 80s. But we do not currently recommend that at Doman Learning. And I think that, I try to urge parents to remember that when he was writing those books, he was writing at a time where, about 80% of homes had one stay-at-home parent. So it was just a different time. 10 sets a day is not at all realistic for many families today, and especially families where both parents work. So, for example, in the Doman Learning courses, we're recommending maximum 5 categories in a day. But for many families, we even reduce it to 3 categories in a day. So I think I kind of bring this parent's attention to that. And probably it's a good idea to take a look at what we're doing at Doman Learning and see what we're recommending now for modern parents. And then to answer your second question about the 3.5-year-old. So a couple of thoughts. My first question is, have you tried, teaching images along with the words? Because in about 80% of cases, when, families ask us, they say, oh, I'm reading the book, but my child has kind of lost, interest. Once we say, okay, add images to go along with the words, which is something that now that we provide with the Doman Learning materials, I'd say about 80% of the time the parent contacts us 2 weeks later and they go, oh, everything's going great now, thanks. And then, maybe 1 out of 5 times there's some additional work we have to do. So yeah, for this parent, I would say, okay, for that 3.5-year-old, do the pictures and words, like use those Doman Learning materials, and then maybe just start out with like 1 set a day of pictures and words and see how that goes before you start ramping up to a very, very large program.
But by the way, Sai has followed up. She said, yes, he only likes the images. He looks away when I show words.
Okay. Now, Sai, are you showing picture, word, like with these materials where you're showing like a picture card and a word card? Because it is important when you're showing a set of cards like this that you're showing them quickly, because many children will. Says yes. Okay.
I also wanted to say, Sahi, in her question, she has another infant now who's younger. Is there any way like you would maybe start teaching the younger child first, then bring in the older kid?
Well, I mean, sorry, I thought you were asking Sahi, but
no, I'm asking you.
Yeah, because for some children, when they start to, first of all, it's fun to do the program with company, right? To learn with company. So very often, if a parent just starts showing cards to one child, the other child will automatically start asking kind of like, hey, can I be a part of this, right? Because they're saying, oh, look, they're having fun together. So I want to be a part of it. So absolutely no, like it's a great point. Sometimes just saying, like, you know what, I'm going to go over here with Michael and we're going to look at cards together. And all of a sudden Sammy's like, hey, can I be a part of this too? So that can be a kind of a good way to do it. I think, Sahi, just one final thought. It might be worthwhile for you to shoot a video of a session to Noah, because it's the kind of thing that when you say he looks at the picture and then looks away from the word, one of the concerns that I have when I hear that kind of thing is, because you said you're showing the materials quickly, is, okay, could the print size actually be too small for him? That's my only concern. But sometimes when I get to see a video, Noah and I can take a look at it and we might spot something in the way the session is being done that we can kind of tweak or correct, and maybe it goes better.
Yeah. So Sahi, just send the video to hello@domanlearning.com and I'll make sure Spencer and I watch it and get back to you.
Great.
Okay, moving on to Carolyn. How best to time encyclopedic learning cards and reading cards? Yes, it is only a few seconds, but are we meant to do a set every 15 minutes or something all morning? Or can we batch them and do 3 sets at a time with each meal, etc. Just having a hard time understanding what the timing should look like realistically in a day.
Yeah. And again, one of the great thing, Noah, about these questions that we're getting today, these are parents who have read our grandfather's books, because like I can tell based on your questions that you've all studied the programs carefully. So the 15 minutes between sessions, again, something that's recommended in my grandfather's books. In the Doman learning courses, which we've been creating the last couple of years, I say 5 minutes between sessions, again, to help parents fit in the number of sessions. And the other thing is, I also tell parents it's perfectly fine to show a set of what were the two programs that this mom mentioned? She said
reading and Doman cards.
Reading and Doman cards. So it's perfectly fine, for example, to show a set of reading. And if your child is happy and interested, immediately pulling out a set of Doman cards and showing them, right? So it's fine to do reading and Doman cards back to back. I just want 5 minutes break between reading and reading again, or Doman cards and Doman cards again. So that way the child gets a break between the same activities, but perfectly fine to put two different activities back to back. So along those lines, even if you were doing math, you could do reading. And if your child's happy, Doman cards. And if your kid's still happy, you could do math. And then you call it quits and take a 5-minute break.
Moving on to Svetlana. I'm teaching my child maths, and the question is, we are right now doing addition and subtraction sentences, like 75 minus 15 plus 40. And I show him two cards with 190 dots, but he avoids choosing the right one. Sometimes, with smaller numbers, he shows the right answer, but in most cases, he just grabs both of them. Do you think he is unable to differentiate large amounts or just not willing to? Should I just continue to show him the answers? I also want to add on here, she said, my son is 6 and thanks to your program, he can now read text, even though he doesn't talk, ASD. I know that smaller children usually do better at maths, but he seemed to be really interested when we started, and even now he likes watching his cards, but doesn't like showing the answers.
Got it. Okay, there's all... I'm really happy she gave all that information because it really helps me. So, a couple of quick comments. So this child is 6 years old, but has an autism spectrum diagnosis, and it not very verbal, right? So a little bit of an outlier, compared to maybe other children who are getting this program at a younger age. So a couple of quick thoughts. He is 6 years old. And as children get older, recognizing higher quantities becomes more difficult, especially if they've already recognized the numerals. So it might be more difficult for him to perform mental math with the dots at higher numbers, like she just indicated, because like she said, he does better with lower numbers, right? So that innate number sensibility he has might be limited to maybe certain smaller quantities, but not the highest quantities, like 190. If I were recommending, this mom, I would tell her to, in the Math Before School course, to move on to the B modules, which are the modules for children who are 2.5 years and above, where we get into teaching mental math using actual numerals, like number symbols, because I think he's probably ready for that now and might even benefit from that more than the higher dots that he may not be able to recognize. Now, one other thing, she says he grabs both cards at the same time. To her point, that may mean he may not know the answer, or that's also a typical thing that children will do when they just don't want to do something. It's kind of their way of saying, hey, get this out of my face. I don't want to do this. So there might be some of that going on as well. So I'd say watch the B modules and kind of move on to the next steps with the math program.
Okay, this is from Zach, and I think this is more of a question for me, but he said, I'm curious if you have a physical product. I can buy the words, numbers, and pictures in the preschool reading and math course. I'd like to use physical copies before I print them all out. I'd love to just buy them all printed if at all possible. Thanks. So I want to say Zach is not alone. We've had many parents reach out And it is this is our goal for 2026 Doman Learning to release physical products to our parents. You guys are asking for them constantly, and we hear you, and we are working behind the scenes to get this done. So that's a little update there. Anything you'd like to add, Spencer?
No, I don't think so. It just, there's a huge popular demand now for the physical products, and we're just really looking forward to releasing them.
Okay, this is from Felipa. My son is 14 months old. We're now on month 4 of the Doman reading program. He is absolutely obsessed with the single word flashcards. He would go to the box where I keep his cards and say more all of the time. However, he has no interest in the couplets and sentences flashcards. I think it's because he loves looking at the pictures, which the couplets and sentence cards don't have. I started the home books for month 4, and he loves those because they have pictures. I actually tried to do the couplets again in month 4 after I skipped over them in month 2 due to lack of interest, but he's still not interested in them. I would really appreciate your suggestion. I'm not sure whether I should just skip those for now and continue with the single words and home books until he's a bit older.
Correct. Yeah, sure. Intuition is right. Do the single words in the homemade books because, first of all, with the Doman learning materials, those books, we call them Doman books now because they're if you're getting them from the Doman learning sets, they're actually not homemade. But a lot of the first books that we have in the materials only have 2 words or even 3 words on a page anyway. So very similar to a couplet or a sentence, right? And so if your child is interested and enjoying those, just do the words and the homemade books, and we can try couplets and sentences in the future.
Okay, this is from Dominica. My 8-month-old has been doing dot equations since she was 4 months old, but she loses focus with longer multi-step problems. I stick to 2 simple 2-element equations like 23 times 2 equals 46. And while she enjoys choice tasks, I feel she's getting bored after 4 months of the same routine. How can I make these 1 to 100 dot equations more interesting in the simplest way possible without making them too long?
So, no, if I understand correctly, so this child, when she's being asked to perform kind of like a regular 2-step equation, like 22 plus 22 equals 44, she's doing pretty well. But it's when they get to multiple step equations that there's a challenge.
Yeah, she said 5-step equations.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I mean, the first thing that I'll say is great job. I mean, you've already achieved so much because listen, even, when you're teaching a small child, just the ability to perform a simple, well, we say simple, but to perform any kind of mental math, like the example you used, 22 plus 22 equals 44, that's a humongous achievement. The multiple step equations, yes, there are certain children that can grasp those, and there might be other kids who they're not able to, and that's okay. Sometimes it's not worth it to, especially if a child seems to be struggling in something, we don't want to push it because then the child starts to think, oh, maybe I'm not good at math because I can't do 5-step multiple step equations, right? Which you and I know is silly, right? Because your child is advanced in math. But what when we think of ourselves, right? Are we good at something? Are we bad at something? It often, unfortunately, depends on how we think we do compared to everyone else. So the reason why this is important, right, is a small child who can do, mental math, but can't do 4 or 5-step equations. If they keep getting reminded they have a challenge with that, they might start to identify with, oh, I'm not very good at this. And that's the last thing we want to do. So my advice, especially if you've been doing this for months, is to move to the next steps with math. And I would be, Noah, does it say what age this child is?
8 months old.
8 months old. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think at this point you can definitely, move to the next step in math. If you're following the math before school course in Doman Learning, move to the next steps after the quantity cards and the equations.
This is also from Dominica. How many repetitions per card do you actually recommend? I've seen 15 repetitions for reading in bits, but other right brain programs suggest only 3. Why not systematically reduce the number of presentations as the baby becomes a faster observer to prevent them from getting bored? What is your suggestion for the ideal frequency?
So in general, we do exactly what this mom is asking, which is as children get faster and faster in their learning, we do decrease the frequency of instruction. So we'll very often begin with maybe 3 times a day, showing a category of words, for example, 3 times a day for 5 days. And then if a child demonstrates they don't want or don't need that number of repetitions, we will reduce it, because the last thing we want to do is force a child to look at something that they're not enjoying. So what she's saying is absolutely right on. But in terms of like the ideal frequency, to be honest, it depends on the kid. And so that's why when we say we recommend showing something 3 times a day for 5 days, it's because that is a number of repetitions that for the vast majority of children is enough, and also they enjoy it. Okay. So that you have to find a happy balance, which is the right frequency and the child still enjoys it. So I would say start with the frequency recommendations that we give, and then reduce them if necessary.
Okay, the last question from Dominica. What about reading Doman books to a baby below 1 year? As I understand, after 1 month of showing sentences, we should start reading Doman books. But how should I read to a small baby? Should I read the book loudly with her sitting or rather crawling next to me? Or should I show it in the same way as reading cards and bits? I show her cards when she is laying down on a changing table. So how should I introduce these books to an infant?
Generally, I'd say 80% of the time when parents read homemade books to a child, the child is either sitting on the parent's lap and they're turning the pages together, looking at the book together, or they're kind of sitting side by side with the child and flipping the pages like this. Okay. The reason why is homemade books are not easy to present across from someone, right? Like imagine reading a normal book to a child. You can't do it from the other side of the book, right? So yeah, with Doman books, usually sitting side by side or with the child on your lap.
Okay, this is moving on to Toria. Now, this is something I was thinking about literally last week, so it's interesting to get this, and I'd like to hear your feedback on it, Spencer. But so they just started the reading program 2 weeks ago, and they have a few inquiries regarding the visual materials. Okay, so is it appropriate to reuse the same image across different levels, such as single words, couplets, and sentences? For example, I used a specific image of an elephant for the adjective large. Later, I plan to use the same image for the noun elephant. Then I intend to use it again for the couplet large elephant, and eventually for the sentence the large elephant is gray. So like for me, right, the idea is like if you learn the word red, right, and you learn the word apple, and then you have the couplet, which we have in our materials, red apple, showing the image for red and showing the image for apple, using the image also for sentences and couplets. I was wondering, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a question that I would say I'll give you my answer, but it wouldn't necessarily be the same answer for every child. So, is it okay to reuse a picture? My quick answer is yes, it's okay. Would I do it many times, as kind of is indicated in the question? I wouldn't, because at a certain point, the child's probably going to bore. It also depends a little bit on, and this might actually bring a final conclusion to this question. If it's being put in a set of couplets, but the 4 other couplets in the set have new pictures, okay, using the gray elephant again, not a big deal, right? Because the child's getting 4 new pictures in that set. But if you're recycling all the pictures, that now becomes an issue, because the kid's like, hey, I saw all of these already, right? Kids like new things. So most likely this parent is just talking about a one-off kind of odd, card, being reused or picture being reused. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah. I just
Yeah,
wouldn't do it across all the materials.
I also think, when I've made a lot of these images, right? And the problem is adjectives are very, very difficult to show, to get an understanding of. Obviously, elephant is elephant, right? But the word large, using just the picture of elephant, the child might not have the context to how large an elephant actually is, so providing that context within the picture, right? Something they might know, right? They might know the size of a banana. Putting that next to an elephant, that can show what large really means. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Noah,
um,
before your next question, I just wanted to say we got two questions that are similar in the chat. We have Dahlia on YouTube who's asking about starting at 19 months. And then we have Prachi on Instagram asking about her baby who's 20 months. And they're both kind of asking the same question. Is it too late to start? And the answer is no. This is a perfect time to start. And many, by the way, many of the questions that we're getting from parents today started well after that age. So absolutely perfect time to begin. Okay, no.
Okay. So this is the last question from the pre-submitted questions. So these are the questions from parents who are enrolled in our courses. This is from Anna. Question about my 3-year-old daughter. She can count to 15, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, by pointing at things. Will this interfere with the learning method from Module B Math, where we present quantities of poker chips without the actual counting?
No, it won't interfere at all. So in the Math Before School course, for everyone who doesn't know, there's the Math Before School course at Doman Learning has certain modules for children under 2.5 years of age, certain modules for children over 2.5 years of age. So this parent's asking about a child who's over 2.5 who can already count. And when we created those B modules, we were working under the assumption that many children who were being taught with those classes had already learned some math, right? Because an average 3-year-old usually maybe can recognize a couple of numbers. Maybe they could even count 1, 2, 3. Some kids, depends on the child. So yeah, absolutely. They should. That parent should go full steam ahead with the B modules and start with teaching the quantities with poker chips.
Okay, also from Anna, how would you recommend introducing another language into learning, whether it's math, pictures, or even reading? So also introducing another subject.
Sorry, Noah, can you say that one more time?
Yeah, no. So she's asking about how would you recommend introducing another language into learning, whether even if it's another subject like math, pictures, or even reading?
Well, usually when we add a second subject, it's usually in the reading part of the program because it's usually the most natural place to start a second language, right? Because if we take a set of animals, for example, right? And, I've already taught my child in English that this is bear. If I'm now going to teach, Italian, right? I could show the picture of the bear and say orso, which is bear in Italian, and then show the word for orso, right? So usually, and the other good thing is that now we're teaching a child a second language through images and also through reading the language. So I usually don't on the other side. This is a little bit of a side thing, but they mention math. I usually math is one of the few things I like to teach in one language because math is something that can actually be quite. If a child has to both translate mentally, okay, it can actually sometimes make doing mental math a little bit more challenging. So I like to usually tell parents do math in one language, keep that consistent, and then do foreign languages with reading.
Okay, and this is the last question from Anna. My 9-month-old is currently learning math with dot cards, countries, flags, and picture cards, and I want to start learning to read with her as well. Is it too much?
No, it's not too much. Now, it does depend on this specific family and what their availability is like. But What you could always do is, if you felt like it was getting to be a little too much, you could reduce the number of sets of Doman cards that you're doing to add reading, right? So it sounds to me like she's doing, did you just name maybe 5 sets, something like that?
Yeah, dot cards, countries, flags.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you could always, if needed, you could reduce one activity to increase another if you need to. But if you're asking, is it too much for your child? Absolutely not. Like, your kid will love it and will want more. So yeah.
Those are all the questions. It was a lot of questions this time. It's so amazing getting all of your questions. Oh, hi, Lil Docha. And I just want to let everyone know that if you have a question, you can always schedule a call with me. I am going to post that link one more time. You can schedule a 15-minute call with me. I'm happy to answer any question you have about the Doman method. It's one of my favorite things to do, is talking to you guys. And if you don't want to set up a call, you can also email me at hello@domanlearning.com, and we will also answer your questions there.
Yeah. And Noah, I just want to add one other thing. We happen to get a lot of questions this week from parents who, might have had a child who was diagnosed with some kind of developmental delay or special need. I do want to say, if you're interested, if you're a parent and you're concerned about your child's development, we do have books, for example, for children, for parents of children with developmental delay. So if you reach out to Noah, you could share like the links to the Doman method from special needs to wellness, like books, and also contact information if you want to learn more about those programs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. That's all I wanted to say, Noah.
Yeah. Also, I recommend checking out Lil Docha. She showcases teaching her daughter math and Doman cards, and she makes really great videos. So check her out.
Yeah, great content. We love when parents, share what it's like to do the program at home, because it's great for other parents to be able to watch it and be inspired. Yeah. All right, everyone, thanks so much for joining. We'll be back in April. No, we don't have a date on our next Q&A, right?
Not yet, but it will be posted in the group, and everyone who's on our email list will get an email.
Perfect. All right, everyone, have a great rest of your month. See you soon. Bye-bye.